Look, listen. I know you're random, right? But just listen. Just hear me for a minute. Just listen for a minute. Alright? Just listen. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Random Thoughts and Ideas with Jack. I am your guy, Jack, and this is a podcast about just random thoughts and ideas about everything and everyday life, concepts, mental health, relationships, whether it be romantic or family, and then also a place to get some life saving or money saving DIY tips. So I want to encourage you guys to like, subscribe, and even comment. Comment on any thoughts, any ideas that you might have heard, like or dislike. Any tips, any questions you might have, just shoot them in the comments. Remember, you can find me on all of my handles. You go to my anchor page, you can find it. My handles on YouTube, Instagram, are RTI with Jack. So listen up, listen in, and enjoy. Okay, guys, this is episode 8. Now, today, I want to speak about some direct personal stuff. So you're going to hear about some things about me. I am going to say that I've never spoke about them publicly before. I've never really spoken about it with anyone outside of my immediate friends, close friends and family. So a lot of people who might have heard rumors, we get the facts today. Anyway, today's episode is entitled, is a 2-part, How Meditation Saved My Life, figuratively, and how meditation saved my life, literally. The other side of the other half of the podcast is going to be life after accepting death. So in my previous podcast, you might have heard me spoken about meditation. Meditation is a big part of my life. I might sound a bit hoarse today because I've been talking a lot over the past couple of days and my voice is almost gone. So in a previous episode, I spoke about how I meditate briefly, why I started meditating, and why I continue to meditate. But meditation has a lot of benefits for us, and a lot of people don't know about them because we don't really push meditation. Some people think it's a hippie thing, but meditation on the mental part of it reduces anxiety and it lifts depression, and it can also help with insomnia. Physically, meditation reduces stress and high blood pressure, and it increases our positivity, and it also promotes self-love. Spiritually, this is the one we might know about and we don't recognize as meditation. But if you grew up in a church, you see people praying and have prayer sessions and prayer meetings and talking with God and walking and talking with God and walking in the Spirit and speaking in the Spirit. But that really and truly is a form of meditation because you're deeply in the spiritual realm, even if it's in your head. But spiritually, meditation releases and settles your thoughts and your emotions. It helps you to cope with not the everyday things. There are a lot of other benefits of meditation, and I just think it's one of those things that we don't promote, but it is very. There are many phases where I struggle with insomnia and I can't sleep, and so I just meditate, and it calms me right down. Whatever is the issue, somehow it resolves it. Now, there are many people that say that meditation has health benefits, such as I said before, anxiety. Some people says it helps with asthma, IBS, that's irritable bowel syndrome, insomnia, and a few other things, tension, headaches, and that sort of stuff. So I told you I started meditating from a young age, and sometimes when I do a lot of meditation, whether it be to clear my head or to deal with some issue that's going on in my life, sometimes I get these dreams, these very vivid, clear dreams of things that are going to happen to me, or things that happen to me, or just strange dreams that I cannot understand. And you know what? Some things it happens to you, and we call it deja vu, the French word, where something is happening to you in the present moment, but somehow you think that you've experienced it already. Sometimes we get dreams so vivid and we forget about them. And then when the actual event is happening, you remember there and then, this happened already, although it might have never happened already. So how did meditation save my life? Literally. So when I was younger, I was into the meditation thing. I didn't call it meditation back then, but I just called it me time. I called it me time because I said before too, I am also an introvert. So I have to spend time with myself. And if I don't do it, I went to school at St. Leonard. So one day I was in Eagle Hall, and I was walking. I was walking from Saw Shop to the bus stop. And just before I stepped off the curb right there by the junction that would take you to Richmond Gap or the post office to cross over to the bus stop, I had this vivid truck and died. And in that thousandth or millionth of a second, I actually stepped back. And when I stepped back, as sure as God is a witness, a truck came straight up, did not stop at the junction, turned left and head towards the stoplights. And he didn't blow his horn. He didn't flash his lights. It was there. It was nothing. It was nothing that was done to warn me. And it was nothing, I guess I could say the same thing. The opposite is true. There's nothing that could have warned him that I was about to step off the sidewalk. And funny enough, I don't even remember even seeing the truck coming up from by the post office. And when it happened, yes, it was a near death experience, but I was in more shock that I actually dreamt this thing and it actually happened. It happened to me a few more times in my life, but it was nothing that was life threatening. Just instances where I met people that I could swore that I met before, and interactions, and I was able to say and predict what was going to be said and done before it was said and done because of dreams, right? And dreams, I believe, were brought on by meditations. Now, I'm not saying that if you're going to meditate, that you can dream the lotto numbers and win the lottery. I'm not saying that meditation helps you predict the future. Every experience that each individual has with meditation is unique. And it does things for you different from everyone else. So some people will meditate and get clarity of thought only. Some people meditate to control depression, anxiety, that sort of stuff. So it has different benefits. It all depends on what you believe in and how you meditate, what type of meditation you do, etc. So that's one thing that's always stuck with me. And after that experience, in my mind, I could never not meditate. There have been phases in my life where I've gone months, maybe even years without stopping and doing the traditional meditation, but I've never had a period of my life where I did not at least spend quality time with myself and where my thoughts and relax and got my own space for myself, and which is my original form of meditation. Now, in recent years, I have done a lot of the traditional stop everything be in a quiet place, set the mood, clear thoughts, be still, and meditate. And that has gotten me through a very interesting part of my life. I'm going to speak about that, and that is going to transition into how meditation saved my life figuratively. Now, in 2019, I got sick, and it was something quite strange because I don't catch colds, I don't catch flus, but this particular time I had a cold, cough, a dry cough, sore throat. So I did the old time remedies, lime and honey, etc. But it got worse and it got worse and it got worse. So I eventually went to the doctor. And the doctor told me I had a throat infection. And don't be alarmed because it was something that was going around. It was a virus that was going around in Barbados. This was just before COVID. And apart from that, I was extremely dehydrated. So I was put on drips immediately and I was given antibiotics. But because my throat was so sore, I couldn't swallow anything. So I had to get liquid antibiotics. And I was on a liquid diet. So I was put on soups, Pedialyte, Ensure, and that sort of stuff. And I was told that it would take about 2 or 3 days for the medication to work. So, like after a couple of days, I did start to feel better. And what happened was I got confidence, so I tried to start about doing things I was accustomed doing. But then I realized I had difficulty. I was feeling lightheaded all the time, and I was getting these shakes. So I did some research, and because I wasn't eating meat for a while, because I could only consume liquid meals, I thought I had a B12 deficiency. And one of the side effects of having that is that something you get the shakes, muscle spasms, and lightheadedness. But then I went from lightheadedness to not being able to walk straight in a straight line. Every time I tried to walk, I would walk into the walls and bump into walls. I was always lightheaded, and my throat started to get worse and worse. So I went back to the doctor, and the doctor ran some tests, and the doctor said to me, "Well, look, I can't find anything wrong with you, but because I know you have this throat infection, I'm going to send you to the hospital so they can run some tests on you to make sure you don't have meningitis." And meningitis is when you have an infection that spreads to the brain. So I remember it clearly. It was a Friday evening around 3 o'clock, around 1500 hours, 3 o'clock. And I went to the QEH. And I had a letter from the doctor saying, please check out this guy. I was supposed to get an MRI, so a CT scan, and some blood tests. Oh, I ain't gonna tell you how that experience went. I spent 28 hours in A&E, waiting to. I don't want to say waiting to be assessed. I was assessed a few times. Some tests were run. I got a CT scan, all that sort of stuff. And then 28 hours later, I was told nothing is wrong with me. I can go home. And I said, okay. So I got up to leave, and I stood up feeling quite fine. And as I was walking, I could not walk. I fell. I stumbled across the entire length of A&E. And people were catching me and trying to keep me from falling. And then a doctor came and was like, "Can you walk?" And I was like, "I think I can walk." So they took me into a different room and asked me to walk to the wall. And I could not get it done. Every time I stepped, my whole body was going to the left. And they said they had an issue with my balance. They call it a left gait. And they told me that I could not leave. They have to admit me into the hospital. So remember, this is like 28 hours later. So it was about 7, 8 o'clock in the night, Saturday night. So I got to a ward around midnight, 1 o'clock, Sunday morning. And because of the symptoms, and they didn't know what was going on, they came to the conclusion that I was having a stroke. And so I was put on the stroke ward, which was full. So it was put in a temporary ward. And then when the bed was free, it was put in the stroke ward. Now, and that at that point in time, I did not understand the jargon, right? And I did not understand that when a bed was free, especially at 2 o'clock in the morning, it did not mean that someone recuperated and went home. It meant that someone died and the bed was free. So that never crossed my mind until my first night on the ward. So I got on the ward. I was in the bed. I got set up, whatever. So that which would have been that would be Sunday morning. So going into Monday now, there was this guy to the right of me, a very old guy. Remember, I'm on the stroke ward, so children are not allowed on the stroke ward, so you get an idea. There's nothing fun to see on the stroke ward. And the first actual night that I slept in the ward, the guy to my right passed away. And I remember being woken up around 2 o'clock in the morning, Monday morning, and I hearing all this commotion. And I look over, all the curtains were pulled, and they were doing CPR and all the fancy stuff you see on ER. And then I was there when the person died. And that plays on your mind. What made it even worse is that he stayed there. The person stayed there. The body stayed there. It's about 8 o'clock in the morning, right? And so all that time, the body was there next to me, and it has a smell. I don't know if anyone has ever experienced it, but it has a smell. It's not a horrible smell, but it's a faint smell, and it really played on my mind. And while on the ward, I spent just about a month there. Some people passed away, and I was determined that I was going to get out of this hospital. Now, as interesting as it was, it took about 2 weeks, or a little more than 2 weeks, from where I had the sore throat to actually being in the hospital. And then from the time I got in the hospital, everything went downhill from there. So I remember I said I just had a sore throat. I had difficulty walking, and I had lightheadedness. But that got worse and worse, and it went from that to I wasn't able to see. I had 2 different sight pictures. So one eye was dilated and the other eye was not. So the vision was blurred and I couldn't see. I guess my brain couldn't work out the two different sight pictures, right? I could not talk. My voice was completely gone. I couldn't talk. And so I couldn't see. I couldn't talk. And then I lost full control of my body, my muscles. So for instance, there was a test they were asking me to do where you would take your index finger and touch your nose. I was unable to do that. So every time I tried to do it, I would slap myself in my face. I couldn't control how much strength I was using. Also, if I tried to walk, simple like to put my foot, one foot in front of the other, like my knee would come all the way up to my chest. Like if I was doing some type of karate move, I could not control how my muscles were working. The right side of my body was completely numb. The left side of my face was numb and not the right side. That's something they call Horner syndrome. So only one side of my face was sweating and not the other side. So obviously I am now in this depressing situation all around me, death and people that are sick, people amputees, people that are depressed already, and then I have this thing going on my body. I do not understand. I can't control anything. So they ran some tests. I got some MRIs done, some more CT scans, and they found lesions on my brain. And they were specific not to say tumors, although some books, because I did my own research, some medical journals were saying malignant tumors and not cancerous, but they prefer to use the term lesions. And then they were convinced I had a stroke, but I was convinced I did not have a stroke. And this is why I'm not a doctor, but I did my research, and from all the time I've been studying this thing, or for my entire life, I never heard about someone having a stroke over 2 weeks, a 2 week period. And I did not have high blood pressure. I did not have high cholesterol. I did not have diabetes. I was a little overweight at the time, but all those things were good cholesterol, everything. So it was adamant I did not have a stroke. So me and the doctors used to clash a lot. Not vulgar or anything like that, but I would agree. I made my feelings clear. And they keep running tests. And then eventually they came to the conclusion that I did not have a stroke. It was a very brilliant neurologist, Professor Carbing, and his team. And then it was some other doctors as well, internal medicine and their teams. But what I really appreciated about Professor Carbon is that although he was the expert, he did take the time to listen to not only how I felt or what I was feeling, but my thoughts about what was happening. So even when I was adamant that I did not have a stroke, and he would ask me, well, why don't you think you had a stroke? And I would explain to him, and he would say, yes, that makes sense. But in rare occasions, it does happen. But at the end of it, after all the tests, he came back to me. He said, you know what, Mr. Clark, Jason, you were right. You did not have a stroke. And he explained to me why he thought I had a stroke, how the symptoms came about, how fast I started to recover from them, how fast I started to decline. He did mention that my recovery was miraculous, and he based on that evidence, he was of the view that it was a stroke. But when he did more and more tests, he realized that, you know what, this couldn't be a stroke. It's very close, but a stroke doesn't fit. It doesn't tick all the boxes. And if you have ever watched Dr. House, Dr. House will be, okay, it could be this, but if it doesn't match, it can't be it. And it's similar to The Good Doctor with Sean. If it doesn't fit all the boxes, then it can't be it. And I really do tip my hat to him to this day, because his professionalism and open-mindedness, even though he's a professor and a doctor, did not allow him to be tunnel vision and open the possibility of something else. And bam, there was something else. So I'm back to how fast I declined. So I couldn't talk, I couldn't walk, I couldn't speak, I couldn't see. So I was given a speech therapist. I received speech therapy, physiotherapy. Shout out to Dr. Tola, Tyra Tola, awesome physiotherapist. I received occupational therapy, but I was not on no form of medication because no one knew exactly what was going on. So I got some more MRIs. I got some more CAT scans. I was constantly being monitored back and forth on liquid and solid and semi-solid diets and that sort of stuff. And then I started to recover, but no one could explain why. But I knew the reason why I started to recover, or one of the reasons why, is that I was determined to get out of the hospital. I was determined not to be in this situation anymore. And I saw men so depressed and so sad about their situations that they actually gave up. I saw men will refuse to even lean over to their right and get a glass of water. They will call the nurse to do it. I saw men refuse to try to walk to go to the bathroom because they already settled that that's at the end of their life for them. And to be honest, I must say, one of the things that was a shock for me too is that the first night, when I had to get a bath, it was a female nurse, and she asked me if I wanted her to wake me off or whatever. But at that point in time, I had no choice because I could not control my muscles. I could not control my hands. I couldn't see. Not that I needed to see. I could just feel it wrong or do whatever with the apparatus, the basin or whatever. But I couldn't control my muscles. The second night, it was a male nurse, and he asked me straight, "Big man, you doing this to yourself or because you're a man?" And he said it as a joke, not unprofessional. And I really wanted to do it myself, not because it was a man, but I really did not want to be in a situation where I had to depend on somebody. And you could call it hyper independence. So I struggled to do it, and I got it. And over time, I did it more and more and more. There were times I could not walk at all. So there's this wheelchair with like a beach chair that has a cutout in it. So they will push you in the bathroom. I put you over the toilet, and if you have to go, you go. If you have to pee or anything else, And the same chair or similar chair was used for showers. So I asked somebody to push me in the shower because I don't want sponge off, and I would sit under the shower and try to bathe myself as best as I could. So I was still getting speech therapy, physiotherapy. My voice was gone, but I could whisper. When they did a test of my throat, they realized that I only have one vocal cord that's working. And to this day, it's still the same way. So I had to get speech therapy because if both of your vocal cords don't work, they actually have to close and open for you to make sound. So if one is closing and opening and one is not, then you cannot make any sound. And that's the issue that I had. So I was doing a lot of exercises, and I was doing it so much that the one day the speech therapist came to me. She was like, "How are you doing today, Jason?" And I said, "I'm doing good." And she was in shock because although it was not a full voice, I had a voice. And she was asking me like, "How often you doing the exercises?" And I told her, "From the time you told me what to do, I have not stopped. The only time I stopped doing the exercises is when I was asleep. When I woke up, all day." So she even told me don't do them anymore because she didn't want the one vocal cord that was working to overwork and go way beyond the threshold it's supposed to go. So the same thing with physiotherapy. When I did the physiotherapy and the therapist left, I would do things like sit up or try to stand up on the crutches or try to walk with the crutches or wheelchair to the window and hold the bars and pull up myself and just stand and look outside and try to get up and get back to the bed. And I was doing that all the time, constantly. So it got better and better and better. So now we come back to the diagnosis. We're in the hospital. No one knows what's going on. And the doctor looked at me and said, "We think you have something called NMOSD." Now on the poster for this episode, you're going to see the acronym. And you're going to see what it means or how it looks like. But NMOSD is basically something called neuromyelitis spectrum disease, or some people call it neuromyelitis optica syndrome. It's basically a demyelinating autoimmune disease. A lot of people know about the other one, the famous one, something called MS. Now there are different types of MS. Multiple sclerosis, but neuromyelitis optica is something different. So what is it? It's basically your immune system working in overdrive. So you get a virus and your antibodies fight off that virus. But however, when the virus is gone, your antibodies keep fighting, keep fighting. And this particular disease, your antiviruses, they actually fight your optical nerve. So that's why it's called a neuromyelitis optica, because it attacks your optical nerve. Your optical nerve is that nerve that controls your sight, your speech, your breathing, etc. So one of the fears that some of the doctors had is that I could stop breathing at any time. It was kind of depressing to hear that, but I put it out of my mind one time, and it was focused on getting out of the hospital. So then all the tests changed now to identifying and testing for this neuromyelitis optica spectrum disorder, or disease, autoimmune. So funny enough, is a very, very rare autoimmune. And then, in some cases, some people that have it, they do not test positive for it. So even in rare cases, within this rare autoimmune, you could do blood tests, you could do a spinal tap test, that's testing the spinal fluid, and you could still end up negative. So for a very long time, I was in recovery since 2019, and I'm still in recovery now. I have gotten back all of my functions, but not at 100%. So I would say like 75% in all. I will always tell people like 80%, 85%, 90%. But I know that even in my speech, that I have to take breaths. I can't talk too long. I have to actually take a breath because it's only one vocal cord. So I can't breathe and talk at the same time. So I'm out of the hospital now. I'm doing physiotherapy. So the first couple of days of doing physiotherapy, I realized that I couldn't do much. But when I pushed myself to do more, I would get extremely tired. And then you could physically see the left side of my face start to droop if I had a stroke. And the physiotherapist would stop me and call the doctors. And when I relax, then it returns to normal. So over a while, I was just dealing with that and going piece by piece. And then I got to one point where I actually was able to start walking at home. So get up in the morning, go for a walk, and come back. I'll still be exhausted doing it, but I wanted to get better. And then something strange happened to me. If I laughed or if I started to cough, I will cough and cough. Or if I laugh, the laugh would turn into a cough. And then I can't breathe. Then I pass out. I lose consciousness for a couple of seconds. But the first time it happened to me, I did not even know it happened. I was watching a series on my laptop, and I was eating rice. And the rice got stuck in my throat, and I started to cough. I started to cough. And then I felt my entire body tingling, like I had nettles. And I remember sitting up to look at the laptop, and I continued watching the movie, like the series, like nothing had happened. And then I realized, wait, something just happened to me. Why my back feel this way? My back felt sore, that someone was beating me. All my muscles were tense. And what I was watching did not make sense to me because it had gone past the part I remembered. So I lost like 10 or 15 seconds. And I really did not know that I lost it. Another time I was sleeping and I was coughing and coughing. And then I could feel like my entire body go stiff. And then I woke up and it was okay. But I did not know what was happening to me. I just thought I was so tired that, I just in and out of it. So one time a friend of mine, we were watching television and I was laughing and making sport. And I started to cough. So the laugh turned into a cough. And then I remember coughing and laughing and laughing and coughing. And then I remembered the person over me freaking out. Like in pure panic. Phone in hand, calling the ambulance, cell phone in the next hand, calling my best friend, and just body just losing their shit. And it was like, what is happening? And then it was like, calm down, calm down. What the hell is going on? And they was like, you know what's happened? I was like, well, what happened? What were you freaking out about? Because in my mind, nothing happened. I was just coughing and laughing. Nothing happened. But when the person recounted to me what happened, I was laughing. I started to cough. And then my body just went stiff. I fell and hit my head on the ground and passed out for like 30 seconds. And they were trying to talk to me, shaking me, hitting me, and it was not responding. And that person was losing it, right? And then I realized, yo, this thing is happening to me. Went back to the doctors. They said it was something called cough syncope. And then, like, so it's a psychological battle of fear of not being alone, fear of, no, something happening to me. And my daughter was with me at the time because my wife is working overseas. So it was just me and my daughter. So I didn't want like something to happen to me when she was here. And then, she wouldn't know what to do. Although she knows her grandmother's number. She knows we talk about it. Have a lot of signs in the kitchen of the police number to call, or how to call, when to call the ambulance, way to call the ambulance, fire service, and what to do. Go outside and get a neighbor, that sort of stuff. But then something else started happening to me. I would be sleeping, and then I would actually wake up out of my sleep and cannot breathe. Literally cannot breathe. I would get up on my feet. I'll walk around and in a total panic. And the only reason that I was able to get past that is because I'm a diver. I like diving. I do diving. And in diving, you're taught exercises on how not to panic, how to control your breathing. And it was instinct to just start doing the exercises. So I tried to bring my heart rate down, try to relax. So imagine not being able to breathe. And I'm talking about like 2 minutes, a minute and 30 seconds. The longest has been about a minute, 2 minutes and 35 seconds of not being able to breathe. And just looking in the mirror, looking at myself, and watching myself calm down and trying my best to relax my lungs, relax my throat, and just relax myself. And then piece by piece, I will pull, and a little bit of oxygen will go through my nose and go down, or a little bit will go in my mouth and go down. And psychologically, that was terrifying, extremely terrifying. So during this whole thing, I was not meditating at all. So this is how meditation saved my life figuratively. When I was in the hospital, there was a point in time where people were dying, and I had the thought that, you know what? Sorry, got emotional there. I had the thought that that this is it. This is the end. This is the end of my life. This is how my number was going to get called. And I mean, emotionally, it was wrecking. But I thought, you know what? Like, I got life insurance, so if I die, half of it is going to pay off the entire mortgage. The other half of it is going to go to my children, so they didn't have to worry financially. That was my thought. I so serious, and it was messed up. And I got comfortable with the idea that I was not going to leave the hospital. Even though I was pushing, I want to get out of the hospital, even though I was like, I'm not staying in this place, I'm not there in this place. In the quiet moments, in those moments when you can't do anything, when I could only lie on my bed and look up to the ceiling, those thoughts came. You know, this is it, Jason. This is how your life ends. And I would say a lot of things happen right after those dark times, like sometimes I would get a visit from someone I didn't even expect. And that did so much. I remember a member of a shooting club in Barbados, and at one of my lowest points, someone delivered a gift basket with fruits and all sort of things, and I had this card from the club saying, "We know you're not well. We wish you well. We can't wait to see you on the range again," etc. And that really lifted my spirits. I also got a few visits from some colleagues. I won't call the names, but it was very uplifting. Spiritually, it was uplifting. Also, on the flip side, there were some people that I thought I would have seen, that I thought were my friends, I thought were close to me. They didn't come once, didn't call once, but I was okay. So then, when I was out of the hospital and I was at home, and I was my mind getting my mind right, and then these things were happening to me, like I would wake up and can't breathe, or I was losing time if I cough or I laugh. Then I went back into that same mindset that I am going to die at home by myself. And then there was one point in time that I was so low that I decided that I needed to meditate. And because of all the madness that was going on around me, I just forgot about meditation altogether. And then my mind was all over the place. And I don't speak to a lot of people. I don't speak to people at all. So I keep everything to myself, right? So this is the first time I'm actually speaking about this. I'm actually saying things aloud. And I was convinced that I was not going to live to see 2020. Then I was convinced I was not going to live to see 2021. In 2022 now, I am hopeful that I will live as long as I could live, because I started back doing meditation, and it really created the space for me to actually address how I was feeling. So the doctors just asked me if I want to see a psychologist, a psychiatrist, because all of them keep telling me that I've been through something extremely traumatic and that I need to speak to somebody about it. And in my mind, I was like, yes, I've been through something traumatic, but there are people that have been through worse, or that are going through worse. There are people that were on the ward that lost limbs and that have been in the hospital for months and not even had one visitor. And in my mind, they were worse off than I was. So I ignored the fact that Jason, I had gone through something very traumatic. And in my mind, the world keeps turning. So I kept doing what I needed to do to get myself straight. I kept presenting this strong shell for my daughter and family members and close friends. But in the quiet times, I was actually losing my shit. I was actually extremely depressed. I even think about it, it gets me really emotional, but I was extremely depressed and extremely fearful. And then I realized that I fully accepted the fact of death. I fully accepted the fact that I was going to die. However, when I did not die, I never addressed the fact that I needed to go on living. So that's why I titled this part of the podcast Life After Accepting Death, because I never addressed the fact that I now must go on to live. I now must continue to plan and put things in place. And because of that, I was like in limbo for a long time. Like I was just going through the motions, just day after day, and not addressing anything. Just being distracted by everything that I could be distracted by. I must rewatch every series on Netflix and rewatch every series I ever watched. Just being distracted. And then I started back meditation. And a lot of the noises that were in my head screaming at me, all of the sad, depressed feelings started to subside. The more I meditated, the more I set the mood for meditation, quiet space, burn incense, relax my body, clear my thoughts, and just be in myself. It created a space for me to address the fact that I am not dead. I am not going to die right now. I'm not probably going to die of this. And that after I did that, then I started to feel a lot better. There are times that I still feel kind of sad or cautious about doing a lot of things. So I don't exercise too heavily. I don't run anymore. Because I have a great fear that I'm going to go exercising by myself and I'm going to relapse and no one will know. Or I'm conscious of doing it with somebody else. And then somebody else has to deal with me dying with them. And that in itself is traumatic. And there, even if you hear how I'm speaking, that is still the problem because I am not putting myself first. I always naturally think of the position I'm going to put somebody else in. And that was also a problem that I am still trying to address. So back to the diagnosis. I was released from the hospital with a working diagnosis of neuromyelitis optica syndrome or neuromyelitis optica spectrum disease, autoimmune. So I did all type of tests. I sent my blood to the States. I got a spinal tap, a LP, lumbar puncture. Sent my spinal fluid to the States again. It all came back negative. I got some more samples sent to Costa Rica. They came back negative. So the doctors came back and said, you know what? It might not be this thing. And it might be multiple sclerosis. And you need to investigate something called multiple sclerosis or relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis. Now, I mentioned a big word earlier, something called demyelinating. So let me explain what demyelation is. So your nerves have a protective layer around it. Just like the electrical cable, it has the insulator around it, or the insulation around it. Your nerves have that same thing. And that's called myelin, right? And sometimes the myelin breaks off and it starts to grow. And it can grow into tumors, or in my case, lesions. And then your autoimmune, your antibodies, sees that as a threat. And then it starts to attack the myelin that's broken off. And that's how we get your body attacking itself. Now, myelin takes very long to repair. And it's really related to inflammation. It's an inflammation-based or inflammation-caused disease. So obviously, the more inflammation you have, the more you're susceptible to it. And remember, in my case, it was in the optic nerve, which is the nerve that controls sight, speech, breathing, balance, coordination, that sort of stuff. But it can happen in different parts of your body as well. So obviously, it will have a different name. Now, multiple sclerosis, when you get a CAT scan or an MRI, it would present the same way that mine is presented in. I had lesions in my spine, my upper spine, my lower spine, and my middle brain. But the thing about multiple sclerosis is that it must happen more than one time. So when I first got my MRI, the lesions were present. When I got the second one, they were getting smaller. When I got the third one, they were almost gone. When I got the fourth one, they were gone completely. But the issue is that since I have not or none of my samples have proven that I have NMOSD, then the next step, the next conclusion would be multiple sclerosis. For confirmation for multiple sclerosis, I must have more than one event over a different space of time in different areas. So I need to have another relapse, right? Which is a different event. um, in a different time, so different time period, and then I must have presentations of other lesions. Now, I did not have enough lesions on my first CAT scans or my MRIs to get the diagnosis of multiple sclerosis the first time. But if it happens again, then they're saying that it might be something called relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis. The relapsing remitting or RR, MSRR or RRMS is the fact where you get an acute attack, like what you got, your body just goes against itself, your antibodies attack yourself, and then you recover, you recuperate, and sometimes it could be 10 years or 5 years or 1 year, and it happens all over again. Now the issue is that every time it happens, you lose a little bit of yourself. So some people, and I've watched a lot of YouTube conferences and or listened to interviews with people who have suffered with MS or RRMS. And in my job, I used to volunteer with the MS Society, and there were days they take persons dealing with MS to the beach, and I would be like a safety swimmer for them, and I would talk with them and spend a day with them. It was always nice. I met some very brilliant people doing it. And so I had a little bit of experience with people suffering from MS. I knew what it looked like from the outside, how scary it could be physically and looking at it, but I never understood how scary it is mentally. So I shout out to all the people that are survivors, are surviving with MS. I want to shout out the society as well, all the people who volunteer and help, all those people who deal with it, also those with NMOSD. So funny enough, when I was in the hospital, when it came out, I went back to an outpatient clinic, and the doctor told me that it might sound strange, but don't be offended. We are so happy that you came to the hospital, because since my diagnosis, a few people came in and they were able to reevaluate some of the people that were there to realize that they did not have a stroke. They did not have a stroke whatsoever, that they actually had NMOSD. There was one lady in particular that lost her sight. I'm not sure if she regained it, but sometimes you could lose your sight and you could regain it over time, or you may lose your ability to walk and you regain it over time. But then when it happens again, you get another attack, then it keeps getting worse and worse. So eventually, over time, you either die or you lose full function, right? So it's a very scary disease. But there's also the chance that this was just something very strange that happened, something that could have been related to stress, high stress. And I do have an extremely stressful job with a lot of responsibilities. And I found myself for a very long time like going to work at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, and not leaving work till like 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, sometimes 10 o'clock, sometimes not even coming home at all, and just continuing to work. So I had a very stressful job. I'm on sick leave now, but it was extremely stressful and very demanding, and there were a lot of other factors that made it even more difficult, and that's always the human factor of people and some of the things that people do, right? So it is very possible that what happened to me was something very random and strange, and it could not be MS, it could not be RRMS or MSRR, and it might not even be NMOSD, neuromyelitis optica syndrome. It might not be, but the chances of that is in the air, and the only way to determine is if I get another episode. Now, I've heard people say that or rumors that I had a heart attack, that I had a stroke, and that I had all different sort of things, probably everything that you can think about saying, but it's not true. And if people took the time to actually find out and ask me what was going on, they would have known. But it is a very scary experience. But what I take away from it is this fact that we need to address how we feel, and and I want to speak of persons in general, but specifically men, because we don't have outlets. I will always advocate for men. We need not to continue in the idea that we are to suffer for the greater good, and that no one needs to know what we're going through, because I believe by sharing this experience, I am creating awareness for mental health issues, creating awareness for NMOSD, creating awareness for MS and RRMS and other things, and creating awareness about meditation, the things I've spoken about, and whatever type of inspiration someone listening to this could get. Now, it's important that we as individuals, as people, find a way to deal with stress, find a way to deal with emotional issues, find a way to speak to people, to deal with how we are doing generally. And if you don't have anyone in your life that you can have that conversation with, family or friends, there is nothing wrong with therapy. There is nothing wrong with going to a professional. We as Black people are never taught to understand that is important, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the idea that if you go and seek help from a psychiatrist, whether it be, and the poor stigmas that come along that, with that, like if people go to the mental, or somebody see a can of the mental, even if you went to visit somebody, or you go to the mental gym, or you just went and ask for directions, somebody see a can of the mental, you're mad. And I think that is stupid and childish and is backward thinking. Seeing a psychiatrist, psychologist, a counselor, someone to talk to, is nothing wrong with that. It is healthy and is mature to do so. We tend to only do it if you're in a church, you're going to speak to the pastor. And if you want favor or whatever, or an elder or deacon in church, which is okay. But there's nothing wrong speaking for a professional about how you feel and the things that are going on in your head, even if it's just a talk. There are many charities on the island to assist young people. There are many charities on the island to assist not young people, not so young. There are organizations on the island that offer free counseling and free services. There's even one for government workers in Belleville. I'm not sure if you could call the name because I didn't seek permission from them, but you could Google it. There are a lot of places on the island that provide free counseling or a few free counseling sessions. I think the one that does for the government, you are allowed to have 3 or 4 free sessions a year. And I think police, soldiers, and firemen are allowed to have an additional 2 or 3, depends, I can't remember now. But there are outlets. And there's nothing wrong with calling a hotline and asking a question. There's nothing wrong with calling Parados and asking for assistance, even if you don't know, even if they can't help you, you reach out to an agency and they can point you in the right direction. Right? Google, we all have Google, or you could shoot me an email and they could also point you in the right direction. There are a lot of people I know. There are a lot of agencies and charities on the island that are specific and they're anonymous. They keep all your information quite anonymous and classified, so you don't have to fear about that. So if you want, I can just shoot you a list of some of the places or some contact people. Don't worry. I don't care who you are. I don't care. I don't want to say don't care. That sounds harsh. But my intent is not to know who you are. My intent is to point you in the direction for help. And I hope that in my life, what's ever left of it, however long I have on this earth, that people could do the same thing for me. If I need help, point me in the right direction or tell me what I need to do and let me do it. Right? So I'm going to close here. So just to have a recap, spoke about how meditation saved my life literally, how meditation saved my life metaphorically. The second part was life after accepting death? What do you do when you accept the fact that you're going to die and don't die? And how that was for me, my journey, and my diagnosis, or my working diagnosis of neuromyelitis optica syndrome, or neuromyelitis spectrum disease, which is an autoimmune disease that attacks the optic nerve. And that journey, that psychological journey of my diagnosis and my illness and recovery. Now, let's just say that I am recovering quite well. There are some few issues I still need to deal with. A lot of them are physical and a lot of them are psychological. I still have some fears I'm working out, but through meditation and therapy, I'm going to get that done. And I hope that this has been a little bit inspirational for you. And it can help you or someone else that you know. So thank you for listening. This is episode 8 of Random Thoughts and Idea with Jack. I am your guy Jack, just here to have a conversation with you. Now, there's a few things coming. Today, I am going to be a part of an interview panel. We're going to discuss a very interesting topic, and I'm going to share that separately. But so I just want to say, look out for that. New things are coming. There's going to be a panel with some people who studied in Cuba. And I'm going to promote on this platform that in particular interview or a series of interviews. The first one is going to start today, this evening, at about 6 o'clock. So I'm going to publish this the same time I always publish, at 8 o'clock tonight. So by the time I publish this, we might be still having the discussion, or it might be over. And I'm going to let you guys know where you could get that, where you could see that, and all the handles to see that. So thank you very much. You'll be listening to your boy Jack, JAC. This has been Random Thoughts and Ideas with Jack, RTI with Jack. I done know. I say what I had to say. I share my random thought with you. Tell me what you think, though. Tell me what you think. Make sense?